Hey, what's going on, guys? It's the Duke of Derps here, once again on Visokii Gaming, and this is Visokii Gaming's top 10 NXT potential men's feuds. At number 10, we have Aleister Black versus Eric Young. This would be a really good match. I mean, if you just really think about this for a second, they're both really good in the ring. They both have really different, interesting characters, kind of almost even along the same lines in a sort of way. But either way, I would be looking forward to this match. I would love to see it. It could potentially happen because if they're both around in NXT long enough to see each other, if one of them doesn't debut for the other, we could potentially see it. I think it'd be good, maybe even for the title, if you could get it on the belt on Black or on Young. Number 9, we got Bobby Roode versus Drew McIntyre. I mean, this match would be brutal, man. I mean, I think you get some stiff shots in there from McIntyre, as long as Roode's willing to take it. Bumps like that, and it could have a pretty good match. I think the storytelling of this feud would be where it would take off because anyone that's heard McIntyre on the mic recently, he's just killing it, and we all know what Bobby Roode is. So there's that. At number 8, we have Cassius Ohno versus Eric Young. I would like to see this match for the same reasons I'd like to see Aleister Black versus Eric Young, because I think they could have put on a really good match and tell a decent story at the same time. I don't know how that would go for a potential feud in the future. Like, maybe this is something you could do on the side for Cass right now, but it could be a title feud. At number 7, we have Hideo Itami versus Eric Young, another technical standpoint match. This match will be really good. I really hope that at the end of the day that this match happens, because it would be a shame, especially since they're sort of, Hideo Itami's this really interesting character and Eric Young is also this really potentially interesting character if they gave him enough time. And I would really love to see those two clash and what would happen there. I think that would be really good. At number 6, though, we have Aleister Black versus Bobby Roode. And let me just say, I think the match wouldn't be as good as some of the other matches on this list, but even if Black didn't say a thing and Roode just ran the feud on the mic by himself, I think this could potentially be one of the feud of the year candidates if they could put on a good enough match. Bobby Roode hasn't necessarily been allowed to go necessarily technically. He kind of a little bit did with Nakamura, but since then they haven't really let him go all out in his matches except for maybe at takeovers. So I think if you let Bobby Roode a little more loose technically, let Aleister Black do his thing, you could have a really good, interesting feud. At number 5, we have Drew McIntyre versus Hideo Itami, and I think speaks for itself. We could almost even see this. Like, say Itami takes the belt off Roode, and Roode gets called up. Well, this could be your next feud, even though they're both would technically be faces. You don't necessarily have to stick to those rules for feuds, especially if you can maybe turn McIntyre heel. If, say, like, maybe he bills for the title. Maybe Itami loses this Vi. McIntyre loses his Vi for the title, and then you have them face each other in like a number 1 contender thing. And you could like make it like Roode's interfering like a bunch, or whoever holding the title interfere a bunch, and then maybe one of them could, or you could just have one of them win the title and then start the feud, which would be fine if you call Bobby up. But I was trying to find another way to do that, but yeah, it's just you have to call Bobby up for that one. I don't think that's going to happen before either one of these guys would be called back to the main roster, or up to the main roster in Tommy's case. At number 4, we have Bobby Roode versus Cassius Ohno, and they seem to be going this way for a while. We've seen the match. We know they can have a match together. That's undisputed at this point. They can definitely have a match together. As to whether or not the feud would be good, I guess that's really up to them. If they want to put in the time on the mic, it could potentially be built to be a monster feud that, again, could go potentially feud of the year. At number 3, top 3, Aleister Black versus Cassius Ohno. Again, this one speaks for itself. Tommy End versus Chris Hero. Everybody wants it. We all know you wouldn't even have to explain to wrestling fans why these two guys were great before, because by the time you'd have this feud, they already know. So there you go. So this one's a triple threat, actually. I don't know if this technically counts as a feud, but it's definitely a match I would love to see. But this is also, if you could build it as a feud. Drew McIntyre versus Bobby Roode versus Hideo Itami, which is actually a way they could go with things right now. Like, if Itami won the title off of Bobby Roode, but Drew McIntyre's been destroying people, so he also deserves a title shot. You could just throw him into a triple threat like they like to do on NXT. NXT is really interesting that way because they don't follow the traditional rules of wrestling, where if I beat up a guy, take his title, sometimes he just goes away so that I can move on to the next guy. And that's fine sometimes, but I feel like in this particular situation, this is what you would much rather do because you could get a really good match out of them. And at number one, and this is only on number one because it's going to be an amazing match, I think, and stiff as hell. Will be Hideo Itami versus Aleister Black. I mean, let's just be honest. This match is a match we would want to see, and it could happen. I mean, very much well. If Hideo Itami never makes it to the main roster, and Aleister Black is still there, on NXT, then yes, please, and make it for the title because this needs to be more meaningful than just these guys are going to go out and put on a stellar match, and the people that don't know that just don't know that. I think this has a lot of potential in it. I think that we could potentially have a really good feud of the year candidate in this one for sure. I said that on a few, but I think some of these could actually take it that far and actually succeed because some of these feuds are just one-offs because I want to see what they can do in the ring, whereas some of these are, the ones that I want to actually see for the part of it that's the feud, not just the, oh, let's fight and let's make it good. Sometimes you need more than that in a feud. And number one on this list gets taken that spot because I think that it could be the perfect mix of the two. Because by this point, you'd already have the characters built up so well. Because you're not going to do this feud if they're not. Yeah, I like this one. It's at number one. That's my top 10, everybody. Stay tuned next week for the next Visokii Gaming Top 10. I'm going to announce it on not this episode of the Raw Deal podcast, but on every concurring week, I'm going to announce it on an episode of the podcast, whether it's the NXT episodes for these NXT lists or the main roster lists. I probably am going to do the next two lists as the women's feuds that I would like to see. It might be a top five, maybe. Actually, I don't know. I may not do that. I'll think about it. I will put out something on a new podcast when I've decided what I'm going to do for my next list. But I think I may just drop one randomly next week just to fill, so I don't miss a week. I just won't announce this one because if you haven't seen it yet today, you should go watch it. We pre-recorded an episode of the Raw Deal podcast, so go and check that out. But anyway, guys, I will see you next time.